prime thing is you have to win.
Ill intent, violence, physicality, pain. Enough is enough.
All right, welcome back to the Just Win podcast. I'm Ted Wynn. That's Sean Reed. He made the journey to Kansas City, which is why he looks like he's freezing right now. And that's Vic Tafer, who got to stay
I don't just
home
look like it.
and enjoy Thanksgiving. The Raiders just lost a heartbreaking loss to the Chiefs. Well, it depends on where your heart is at this game, but they lost to the Chiefs 19-17. Had a chance to win this game. They were 13-point underdogs coming into this game. They were down big at halftime, but they came back. They had a shot to win this game. They got the ball down to the 32-yard line? 32-yard line, had a chance to win, and then shenanigans happens, and we'll break that all down. It's very complicated, a lot of moving parts. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So, essentially what happened, the Raiders were trying to drain some more clock, kind of in an unconventional way. They called a play just to basically have O'Connell drop back and throw the ball out of the sideline to burn 4 or 5 seconds off the clock. The Chiefs did still have some timeouts left, so in theory, even if they went ahead by 1 point with the field goal, the Chiefs could have gotten field goal range and kicked the game winner to win it, and so they wanted to try to prevent that from happening. But they never got that far because there was a miscommunication pre-snap. Part of the issue was the Raiders got out of the huddle too late. They broke the huddle. I think there was only 9 seconds left on the play clock, and so they were in a rush. You can see Aidan O'Connell clapping, signaling for the guys to hurry up and get lined up. He looks to his right while still clapping to make sure that Trey Tucker was lined up right. He stopped clapping and then he looked to the left to see if Jacoby Myers was lined up. While he was looking to the left, Jackson Powers Johnson just snaps the ball. Um, After the game, they both kind of took the blame for it. O'Connell said it was on him because he was clapping when he shouldn't have been. The truth was he stopped clapping about 2 full seconds before the snap. So there was a nice period where he stopped. Howard Johnson just took all the blame. He said it was on him. But something that went overlooked is the right guard, Dylan Parham, taps Powers Johnson right before he snaps the ball. And then that's where you see Powers Johnson snap it back to O'Connell. And he's not looking at it, so it bounces off his arm, bounces off of DJ Glaze's leg, and goes right into the arms of Nick Bolton. And that's all she wrote. But the truth is, blame on 3 guys, I guess, if you want to say. O'Connell he was clapping for quite some time. Like, I think guys got the message, like, you need to hurry up and get lined up. So he probably didn't need to clap as long as he did. Dylan Parham obviously thought it was time to snap the ball. They had like 4 seconds left on the play clock, so they didn't really have to snap it right then and there. And then obviously Powers Johnson for snapping the ball when he wasn't ready. And so it was a series of mistakes that led to that fumble that pretty much ended the game. All the Chiefs had to do was kneel it out by then. And I know there's some controversy about, the penalty that was called on the play. The referee initially signaled a false start penalty, but after they huddled together, they made it an illegal shift. The reasoning, me and Vic both reached out to the NFL, and one of their executives, Michael Signora, responded to us, and he said, had the clock been running at the snap, then by rule, an illegal shift would convert to a false start. But since the clock was stopped because the Raiders had just spiked the ball, an illegal shift is a live ball foul, and that's why the fumble occurred. And the reason why it was an illegal shift is a false start is when you get set, you get lined up, and you move before the ball is snapped. The legal shift is when you're not even set when the ball is snapped. And obviously, he's still talking to Tucker, he's still talking to Myers because they weren't lined up correctly. And you can see the tight end on the left side is like waving and telling the guy to get lined up as Powers Johnson is snapping the ball. That's an illegal shift by rule, and that's why the play counted. And so I know fans were frustrated about it not being a false start, but it wasn't. It literally was not a false start. And so it was just a terrible play, terrible way to end the game that they seemed like they were about to win potentially on a 50-yard field goal attempt by Daniel Carlson.
Which is no give me based on the fact that Daniel Carlson was really bad today. Was 3 missed kicks?
Yeah. I mean, all his kicks were longer than that one, 55-yard, 56, and 58. I mean, he's a guy that he's hit a lot of 50-yarders. He has 30 career 50-yard makes, and he's on fire this year. I mean, I think only missed 2 kicks coming into this game all season, and so this was a really anomalous game for him. But like you said, I mean, it's never a guarantee that you make a 50-yarder, especially when a guy's missed 3 of them. But at least they would have liked to attempt it instead of have what happened happen.
Yeah. Vic, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I still think. I mean, I know talking about what happened with the false start and the penalties. And I still think the play was blown dead. I think if you watch the replays, when the ball's hiked, the official's coming in from the one sideline, and so is the other guy from the other sideline. But the one coming in towards Aidan is definitely calling for a false start. And I just think it's the rules say it's a dead ball. I know you can they huddled for a while also. It looked, if you're a conspiracy guy and people always say the Chiefs get all the calls, Raiders get none of the calls, but the fact that they whistled the play dead, there's a fumble, and they huddle for like 90 seconds. The three referee, there's the referees waiting, and they say, okay, you know what, it's a legal shift, game over. I just think it was a fortunate, obviously horrible way to end the game. I think you can really argue that the play was blown dead. So I think there are some reasons for Raider fans to be upset or are happy, if whatever you're rooting for, who knows. But yeah, definitely it was a
Yeah, I don't think they
go
I
ahead.
don't think they blew the play dead before the fumble. I don't think
Well,
that
he's
happened.
coming in, boys whistle. He's running right towards. I mean, so as soon as you watch the
Mm,
replay, he's definitely coming in, and from what I hear, so is the other guy, but you can't see him that well on the replay. But the one guy who's
mm,
calling for the false start, as soon as the play is hiked, he's coming in
mm.
whistling it dead. So I wish, usually when these things happen, you can file like a pull report. You go down, have one guy talk to the official after the game. You can ask them, a question, follow up, and kind of get some more clarity. But in this case, it was the last play of the game, so it was all done by email. So like, they were nice enough to get back to us, and they gave us the quote that Tashan read. But really, there's not. I mean, there wasn't really a direct answer to the questions we asked, and there wasn't any follow up. So there's some still question marks in my mind about how that went down. That all said, I'm not sure why you're trying to throw the ball away at that point. I'm not sure why
Yeah,
why you're in shotgun. Why you're running to the huddle with 9 seconds left. I think if the play call was not in on time, that's one question. I know Deshaun asked Pierce about that. He said no, that wasn't the issue. But I don't know what you're doing in shotgun in that point if you're already in position to win the game with a field goal. So I question what the hell they were doing in the first place. But that all said, I still think it was a dead ball. So.
yeah. I mean, well, the play couldn't have been like it wasn't a false start. So like it was going to be an illegal shift, that's a live ball penalty. Like that's always a live ball penalty because the clock was stopped. So in that situation, like if they were all lined up and then somebody moved, then it would have been a false start. But since they weren't set yet, like it was always going to be an illegal shift. So like the referee, I guess he could have, even if he signaled a false start, it couldn't have possibly been one because they weren't set yet. So it was going to be a live ball penalty regardless because it wasn't a false start. But to go to your thing on Antonio Pierce, because I asked him after the game because we asked him like what was the plan on that last play, and he said it was to burn some clock and throw the ball away. But to me, that didn't make sense because on the Abdullah completion for 6 yards that got them to the 32, they spiked the ball. And if you want to just run the clock out and kick it right there at the 32, just wait. Like if you just wait until there's 3 seconds left and then spike the ball, then you don't have to run this extra play. And because when you drop back and pass, so many things can go wrong. He can get sacked, the ball could get tipped and picked off. Um, I mean, we just saw the Bears game yesterday. Like all kinds of wild shit can happen when you run another play. And I know that a botch snap can obviously happen on a spike as well, but it's more likely on a shotgun snap. Because there's a further distance. There's more. It's just harder to botch or easier to botch a snap on a shotgun. And so it was just an unnecessary play if you were just going to ultimately kick the field goal from where you were anyway. I know things were moving fast. They didn't have any timeouts left. And again, he's an inexperienced coach. And Aidan O'Connell's an inexperienced quarterback. He's only in his second year in the league. Jackson Powers Johnson is a rookie center. There's a lot of inexperience, involved in this decision. And that's probably why it happened. But if you were cool kicking it right there, just wait to spike the ball. And that was, as much as Powers Johnson or Dylan Parham or Aidan O'Connell messing up, it's on Pierce too, because that was just a weird decision that I don't really see the upside of doing.
Well, the problem is you have to have a plan for these things coming into the game. Like these shouldn't be decisions that you make on the fly because when you're making these decisions on the fly, you mess up, and that's why I think there was indecision. I don't think that they knew that the plan was that they're going to run the clock. Um, I think maybe they thought, oh, maybe we'll get another play in, And then once they spike the ball, they're like, "Oh shit, we changed our mind. Now we want to try to force 3 seconds off the clock if we're able to execute a throwaway, which they couldn't even execute a throwaway." So to me, it's just a lack of a plan, and I think they also burned a timeout that they could have used in that situation, um, because earlier the field goal attempt they missed before on the drive before, they called a timeout because they didn't get the field goal team out on time on 3rd and 11. They were. I think he was thinking about going for it, and
No, what
then
happened? They they put the punt team was on the field.
okay,
They
so
were gonna punt.
they couldn't
They were
decide
gonna
whether
they
they
were
want
gonna
to punt it or kick it.
yeah, they were gonna punt. I talked to AJ Cole after the game. He came out there to punt. He was on the field, 4th and 10. That was the plan, was to punt. And AP said that on the sideline, like players were and coaches were kind of, or players mostly, were telling him, "Hey, give Carlson another chance to kick it. It's 58 yards." So that's why he took a timeout and then put the field goal team out there. They weren't going to be able to switch out in time if they didn't call a timeout. It would have been a delay game, and then they would have had to punt anyway. And so I guess he said he felt comfortable with the way the defense was playing at that point. He didn't care if they was going to give the Chiefs a short field. He said, we're playing to win. Let's just try to, at least go get some points out of this instead of punting it. And that's why they took the timeout and, went ahead and tried the field goal attempt. The thing is, like, if you are going in playing to win, like, you just automatically send the field goal team out there, right? So,
Yeah,
so you don't end up wasting the time. And again, Carlson missed the kick by a mile, so like he was probably gonna miss the kick anyway. The defense did end up getting the stop really quickly. They made the Chiefs go 3 and out. But they did have, like you said, they had to burn the rest of their timeouts, and so they took over, at their own 8-yard line with no timeouts left. And so they could have had that one timeout remaining if they hadn't had that indecision. And again, I know hindsight's 2020, but it's not just a one-off thing with Pierce. Like, we've seen these decisions happen consistently, since he's taken over as interim coach last year, and we haven't really seen him get better in that area. And you got to say, it cost him in this one.
exactly. And to me, it's just again a lack of a plan. Like you should know. I mean, you could come up to your kicker when you're getting past midfield and like, "Hey, are you comfortable kicking from this?" And we've seen those conversations happen to other teams. Like these are conversations that have to happen beforehand, before the actual decision happens, so you're not scrambling and burning timeouts. I mean, like you watch good teams, and almost all these good teams, they always have 3 timeouts at the end of the half and 3 timeouts at the end of the game. But it just seems like the Raiders never have it because they're blowing timeouts because of dumb reasons. And another reason why they lost this game, and it's just another notch in the game management or mismanagement belt for Antonio Pierce.
Yeah, I think it's a shame because they definitely played well enough to win. They came in motivated. They came in, they gave the Chiefs all they wanted as far as the pass rush, and O'Connell made some nice passes late. Brock Bowers was the stud that he's been, even more so than he's been all year. So clearly a game they could have won and really stamped that, hey, not only do the players want, Pierce back, but here's another example of what we can do if we're all on the same page. And clearly they made, some mistakes, which derailed that effort, but they almost had it. They would have been, maybe the second year in a row they win a game of KC and it gets Antonio the job for the following year. But now they're 2-10, and we'll see where it goes from here. But clearly it's a tough loss for this team and also for Antonio.
Yeah, and it's I mean, the Raiders played hard, and I think even like they lost, and yeah, I joke about the elegant tank all the time, but whatever. It's good that they're staying at that number 2 position as far as draft position right now. They're number 2. Giants are number 1. And a loss would have probably bumped them down a few spots. I mean, a win would probably bump them down a few spots. And it was good because some of the young players played very well. Aidan O'Connell played well, 340 yards, 9.7 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns. He was very accurate throughout the game. Made some really tough throws, some really nice throws, like the touchdown to Brock Bowers was nice. The deep ball to Trey Tucker was really nice. Sincere McCormick, we've been talking about how he's the best pure runner this team has, and he showed that today. 64 yards, 5.3 yards per carry. One of the better running back performances that we've seen from young running back. And like you guys mentioned, Brock Bowers, he was unstoppable today. Like the Chiefs were throwing different bodies at him. They try to put their best cover corner on him, McDuffie, and he burned him for a fade. He had 10 receptions for 140 yards and a touchdown. Jacoby Myers was great early in the game too. Trey Tucker finally got that fade ball that we've been waiting for because he gets all his one-on-one coverage because everybody's focused on Brock Bowers, and he finally gets a huge one, a 58-yard touchdown pass. So, a lot of these young guys played well, and they end up losing. But yeah, it was a valiant effort from some of these young players.
Yeah, there's some nice play calls too, like from Scott Turner and his dad. Like you mentioned the Trey Tucker touchdown, but that was a nice play design. It came on the blitz, they have in motion. He kind of went around the edge, didn't slow down, went right past the safety, and O'Connell hit him. So definitely seeing some more confidence, like they mentioned early on in the play calls from the players. Kind of like what's going on as far as that goes. And Aidan made some throws that I think Gardner wouldn't have made based on what we've seen this year. So again, it was all heading towards a beautiful ending, but. I think Josh DeBow tweeted out a stat that's the first time in 25 years teams lost when they were in field goal position, or then when they lost the ball when they're in field goal position with less than 30 seconds to go. So it's definitely you shouldn't lose these games. You shouldn't, or at least deny yourself a chance to have the winning field goal kick, which is what happened. So it's another brick in a really bad season.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, Ted, going into that final situation, not having a plan. However they got there, they got there. They had no timeouts. You're at the 8-yard line. Like you have no timeouts, and you have to go to full length to get in field goal range. Like you should have already had that discussion of like, all right, if we do get down here, we want to make sure we drain the clock out and kick the field goal. If we get within a certain whatever your range is for Carlson that you feel comfortable with, that couldn't have happened. That couldn't have happened. Otherwise they just go ahead, like we said, and spike it. And again, I know this shit is easy to say watching from the press box or watching from home and when you're not in the moment, but like that's why you're the head coach, man. Like this that's what you get paid to do. Like you're not calling offensive plays or defensive plays, and especially when you're outmatched, like you said, 13.5 point underdogs on the road against the Chiefs, national game. Even though you're 2-9 at that point, like if you win this game, that could give you the momentum that you need to show Mark Davis why you need to be back for year two. And you kind of just show all the reasons why, not all the reasons, but part of the reasons why they only have 2 wins on the season. Like this team wasn't going to be good this year because of the quarterback situation, all the injuries they had, especially on their defensive side of the ball. But they probably should have like 4 or 5 wins instead of 2, just based off of decision making alone. And so it's kind of tough to have this stuff still happening in week 13.
And it also, I mean, I'm getting, I'm pretty impressed with Scott Turner and the game he called today. And, we've talked about it before. I like what he's done with his offense. And it also begs the question, like, why didn't Scott Turner have more of a consideration to be offensive coordinator? He was an offensive coordinator before. He had some success in Washington. His offense kind of fell off. But after, the whole Kingsbury situation, why didn't Scott Turner get a bit more of a look at offensive coordinator? And I think very clearly now that Aidan O'Connell should have been a starter in the beginning of the season. I mean, he was much better than Gardner Minshew ever was this entire season, this game. So
Oh yeah, I'll try to attack those. I think with Scott Turner, he was on the staff last year with the Raiders staff, and their offense was terrible. So that's why he wouldn't get consideration for the job this year. I would
he
think.
wasn't calling the plays.
Still on the staff. He still had, I'm sure he had a voice. I mean, I don't know if you earn a shot. I mean, you're right. Maybe in hindsight's 2020, but I don't know if you're putting a list together. You're like, hey, what about this guy who was on our staff last year when we were terrible? I don't know if that's a guy can make your list when you make a list. And as far as O'Connell, I mean, they wanted him to win a job at training camp, and he didn't. I mean, they tried, and he was not good in training camp. So, in Gardner Minshew, based on his experience and his mobility, which you saw with Aiden today, he's not mobile. Now, it's definitely that's who he is. That's fine. He definitely has a better arm than Gardner does. But that's why, I mean, hindsight's great, but at training camp, they wanted O'Connell to win this job, and he couldn't do it. So that's kind of why they where they were at.
Let's play devil's advocate though. Like I think we both said because we were at every training camp practice and we
Yeah.
all watched the preseason games. I don't think Minshew was clearly better than O'Connell. Like I just didn't think like for a guy that's the incumbent starter, I think coming in as a new guy, you gotta like clearly be better to start over him. And I just didn't see it. Like Minshew didn't look good to me. Like at any point, like not in the preseason, not in the training camp practices. I just didn't. He always looked more volatile, had more turnovers, in my opinion. Like I'm not saying O'Connell looked great, and I know he had a great game today, but earlier in the season he played, he didn't look great. So it's not like he was going to be a sensational quarterback this season if he started from week one. But I do think, like, given he was the incoming guy, he clearly had more of a feel with the locker room since he was on the team last year and was part of that movement with guys like Devontae Adams, even though he's long gone and probably would have been gone anyway. I think they probably should have started O'Connell in week one. But, you know, again, with all the defensive injuries and all that stuff, like this wasn't going to be the season they wanted it to be, really, no matter what, when it comes to the quarterback decision or AP's game management. So I don't want to act like they'd suddenly be in the playoff hunt if they started O'Connell from week one. But I do think the offense would have been better. And on the Scott Turner front, I mean, I know that the Raiders' offense was bad last year, but so was the Bears' offense. And
Oh yeah.
that clearly
Well,
that clearly didn't stop them from hiring Luke Getsy. So
no, I mean they made the
yeah,
choice. They thought Guess who was less to blame than Justin Fields. Clearly that was incorrect. And then going back to training camp, like you said, like you have to be out the guy, right? But in the same sense, you can say O'Connell knew the offense from last year, he knew everybody, he knew everything. He had the knowledge coming in from all his teammates stuff. So he should have had a better camp than Minshew. And again, it's all hindsight. Obviously, Minshew had a terrible year. He was much worse than he'd ever been before in his career. I'm not sure why, but he was. So clearly now at this point we can say that Aidan O'Connell is the better quarterback. And if they could have figured it out back then, they probably would have more wins right now if he had been the guy all year long.
Yeah, well, the past, the past. Can't change it now. But um, let's look into the future.
Isn't it all
What a
part of
segue.
your Elegant Tank? That's all part of the Elegant Tank, right? That was the
that
first
that
chapter of
was
the
it.
Elegant
Yeah.
Tank. They all were it's all planned ahead.
Yes, exactly. I mean, but I wasn't gonna start no elegant tank talk in week one. I have more class than that. I wouldn't do that.
Do you?
He has more
You
class.
do. I'm not sure if that's true, but all right, we'll give it to you. We'll say you do.
All right, but let's look into the future. What does this game mean as far as Antonio Pierce's future? I don't think you guys saw, but Albert Breer came on to Amazon Prime and was talking about how a lot of people around the league think AP is going to be a one and done.
Um, yeah, I mean, like people have been saying that for like 2 months now, but I think it's feasible. Like I think if they, especially if they lose out the rest of the way, which is possible, or they only finish with, let's say, 3 wins, like you have to take a long and hard look at it, particularly if the decision making doesn't improve, which maybe it does by week 18, but through week 13 it hasn't. And if they do end up with, let's say, the number one overall pick and they have their choice of the available quarterbacks, do you just hit the hard reset from a coaching perspective and hire, you know, whoever the top offensive minded head coach is out there and pair him with a new quarterback and roll it out that way? So I think it's something they'll consider. I don't think it's something that's been decided. That hasn't been my impression. That's not something that I don't think Vic has been Vic's impression. When I talked to Mark Davis at the owners' meetings in Atlanta last month, that didn't seem to be where he was at, and that was fresh off of trading Devontae Adams that day. So he had plenty of reasons to be in a bad mood, but we'll see. I am heading down to Dallas for the owners' meetings in a couple weeks, so we'll see if Mark Davis has a different tone then. But I think it's still to be decided whether or not they bring him back for year two.
Yeah, I think a lot of people around the league are kind of maybe projecting because they think Tom Brady will come in and have a big role, when really no one knows when that would be, if it's right away, if it's in 2 years, 3 years, because Tom's still doing broadcasting. So we don't know what his input would be and what he would think would be the best move, if it's Mike Vrabel or whoever. So I think it's people look at the 8-game losing streak like, wow, that coach is dead. But again, today they were pretty close to beating the best team in the league. So I think you look at the reasons why he was hired are still kind of valid. I mean, is a gritty kind of edge to this team. They do play hard for him. I think you can look at the injuries. I know it's the excuse, but it's a valid one. I think also the quarterback thing. I mean, he himself said many times in the offseason, I don't want a band-aid guy. I want a real quarterback. And he didn't get one, and that definitely cost him some wins this year. So I understand the game management stuff. I understand the issues he's had this year. He said some things which have been kind of curious why you would say that, but I think if you're Mark Davis, you're looking for reasons to keep him and not to dump him at this point. So I still think he might be able to come back if they win some games here. You can't lose out, I don't think. But if you win some games and you show that you have some of the same things that are there while you were hired are still there, I think you can survive this year.
Yeah, there's a video The Athletic just put out talking to Kevin Fishbane, our Bears writer, and he was going through the history of the Bears GM and coaching and quarterback hires and how it never synced up. How one regime picked up a quarterback they didn't want, and then it just happens over and over again. So I mean, I just think if you're going to pick a quarterback, which it looks like they're going to pick, you better be sure that this coach is going to be here in the long run and that he can develop a quarterback. I mean, just my number one thing is if you're going to draft a quarterback, you better have an offensive coordinator because nothing ruins a young quarterback like having a bad system in place or having to switch systems constantly in their career. So that's the thing to me. I mean, again, I'm not saying fire AP. I'm just saying it's something that you better look at. And I think I'd be more on board with keeping him if it wasn't for the game management stuff. But it's like, dude, you don't call offense, you don't call defense. It's literally the only thing you're thinking about or should be thinking about. Like, why is it so bad and not getting better?
Yeah, I think I will say, like on the offensive minded head coach thing, like just because you hire a guy that was good as offense coordinator does not mean he's going to be a good head coach. Like there's so many things that go into being a head coach, from game management, like you just said, to decision making, to relationships, to managing a team, roster building. Like Josh McDaniels was an amazing offensive coordinator. He was terrible as a head coach. Like it doesn't guarantee anything. Like I know Ben Johnson's the hot name, the Lions offense coordinator, and the Lions offense has been great, but he might suck as a head coach. Like that's possible. So like none of these things are sure bets, and so it's not just about firing AP and saying, "Oh, we're automatically going to get better because we hire an offensive minded head coach." Like you have to be really sure that there's a guy out there that you believe is an upgrade. I'm not saying there's not, but I don't think it's as simple as a lot of fans kind of make it out to be.
You could say Josh McDaniels lost the locker room, and to this point, Antonio Pierce is not. So I think that's definitely in his favor. But it's a bottom line business. The Raiders have to win games, even if you're having a rough year. You got to win games you should win, and they haven't this year. They've lost a lot of games this year that they could have won. So that's on the coach. So I think he's got 5 games left to kind of make an impression. He said that the other day, like if the players are playing for a spot next year, and so is he. They're all no one knows what this roster looks like next year. No one knows who the coach will be, and I think it's wide open. So he's trying to build a resume starting today, and today he almost got there, but he didn't. So he's going to need some wins down the stretch.
And I will say another thing, like just as in a comparison, and I'm not saying like it's completely even situation, like the rosters are different, but like Dan Campbell, like he's a sweetheart now, but his first year they sucked, like 3-13. He was a joke because he was talking about biting kneecaps. The team he was going for it on fourth down, and they wasn't panning out, so everybody thought he was a terrible game manager. Then they start the next season. What did they start 2-7 or something like that? Something terrible. And then all of a sudden they go on this run, and now they're a Super Bowl contender. So like I'm not saying that's necessarily gonna happen with the Raiders, but just you know, pulling the leash from these coaches as fast as ever. And there are a lot of justifiable reasons to move on from AP if they do decide to, but I think people just get a little emotional with their thought process sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think um, things are lining up to move away from him because you have Tom Brady coming in, you're picking a new quarterback, and maybe you do want to just start fresh. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Let's
You
start
mentioned
getting.
you mentioned the quarterback development thing, but you're high on Scott Turner and Norv Turner. Norv has a long history of developing quarterbacks, so maybe those guys together can be the guys who help develop a young guy next year. So I'm just saying there might be. You mentioned like how come they didn't look at Scott Turner last year, but you can look at Scott Turner now and Norv Turner as guys who can possibly nurture a young quarterback and get the best out of him. So I think at this point it's wide open. That's why we're going to keep tuning in the games and watching them and see what happens. But and plus this quarterback class is not great. We keep talking about that also. So maybe you don't draft a quarterback in the first round this year. Maybe you wait a year and push the clock back on that whole thing. So who knows? But it's it's a mystery. But I'm sure one we will solve at some point soon.
Yeah, maybe they pick Travis Hunter. Who knows? But I hope you guys had a happy Thanksgiving. I hope
Yeah.
all our listeners had a good Thanksgiving. Thanks to you for joining us. I mean, it's been a hard season, but we're chucking on.
Yeah. See you guys on Friday. Next Friday.
Yeah. Talk
Next
to you
Friday,
guys
to be
next
clear.
Friday.
All right. Hasta la vista.
All right, Joe. Peace.
All right, guys.